Post-war Britain saw an emergence of youth subcultures which defined themselves by their music, fashion, hairstyles and stance. Hairdresser Keith Wainwright, better known as Keith at Smile, was quite literally at the cutting edge of this quest for individuality. Recently, Keith was awarded an MBE in recognition of his distinctive and significant contribution to the success of British music, fashion and design.
I love working with Keith because a lot of the time I wasn't consulted. I mean, for Jubilee, when the buzz cut came, I was in complete shock, but it was fantastic.
When we opened Smile in 1969, we didn't want to be another Vidal Sassoon. We wanted to change things and for things to be different.
Keith Wainwright, better known as Keith at Smile, has come a long way since his early confession of never having done well at school. By the age of 25, he already had his own Knightsbridge salon, and alongside its then expensive £3.50 haircuts, it offered loud pop music, a trendy interior and friendly banter. Keith's clients came from all walks of life, but included a list of celebrities, the likes of David Bowie, Blondie, Toyah Willcox, Michael Costiff, Duggie Fields and Vivienne Westwood.
They played great music in Smile, all the best magazines to read. You know, there was a really well curated selection and always unusual things. And also you never knew who you were going to be sat next. You know, you could be sat next to Scylla or Anita Pallenberg or Steve Strange. There was always someone there you knew, and it was just super friendly and lovely.
There was a record player, and it was a modern record player, and there was leather seats, and this very relaxed, clubby thing. And I think having the records there and the music there made it feel very, very different, and also was encouraging for people in the pop world to come there. There wasn't Spotify, there wasn't any of these things at the time. So music was like, oh, do you like this track? Have you heard it?
Coming from Smile, there was a great look of pinks and blues and colours that hadn't been seen. It was before it got taken up by punk and before it spread all over the world. Smile was one of the first places to do that.
I've always had great hair thanks to Smile. I've only ever been to another hairdresser once. I felt really disloyal and I warned them that when I got back to London, the hairdresser at Smile were going to look at this hairdo and see if you'd made any mistakes.
Brian Ferry was the sort of best example. It's hard to believe now that he tinted his hair blue-black. Well, that was not normal in those days. At one time, people would come in, and I was thrilled about it, with the Brian Ferry album, These Foolish Things, and they wanted their hair to look like that.
Provocative music and fashion fused to form the basis of new youth subcultures in the 60s, 70s and 80s. To be judged for your style and your stance was a badge of honour, not a condemnation. Image was everything. Keith's experiments with colour and cut were a clear statement against traditional styles, putting him at the centre of a new wave.
My hair journey, my hair story, I find one of the most extraordinary stories of my life. I have not had normal looking hair since I was 14. Pointed fringes, pointed back, shaved back of the head.
In those days, it would have, if you had a short back the size of a parting, you would have been part of the establishment. That's the way it was.
And all this was happening before I knew punk existed, so I felt quite insular and isolated.
What I'm grateful for is that I knew and had friends that were prepared to do it. You know, I mean, it took a bit of guts in 1973 to walk around with bright green hair.
I was doing it because I did not feel normal. I did not feel normal inside, so why should I pretend to be normal on the outside? And it was definitely my rebellion.
In the early 60s, I started growing my hair, and it was shock horror for the family, so much so that in 1963, I remember my aunts getting in fury with my parents for allowing me to look like this and saying if they saw me in the street at night, they'd have to cross the road to avoid me.
When the boyfriends of the female pop stars, they would want longer hair, they would come to me because they'd seen how I was cutting Leslie's hair or any of the boys in the shop. It was rebelling against what was the status quo, which I've done most of my career, sometimes to my benefit, mostly not to my benefit.
Thanks to Smile, I've had every hairstyle under the sun, from crew cuts to Mohicans to shaved up and shaved down. Whatever we asked for, we got at Smile.
I've heard you say that you are your own canvas, and actually a lot of your artwork you wear on badges and on ties. How important for you is keeping your artwork and your image connected in that way, and how do you do that?
For me, it's automatic. It seemed natural that one's eyes and one's mind are the same, and you apply them to your art, you apply them to the world around you, without thinking. It's just something that happens.
With clothing and hair, you set a statement. You are actually saying something that you believe in, or it shows the music you like, the kind of dress you like, and also the attitude you have. So I do think that hair, and obviously clothing, makes a big difference and sets the tribe that you belong to.
You can use your hair as a definite statement about who you are, statement about how imaginative you are, and how much you care about how others perceive you, and you're not afraid of how others perceive you. It's an incredibly powerful instrument to have.
I do think one of the things I did very early on, where I had an inch of red and an inch of black, was a sort of bit of a forerunner to this dip dye that's going around now. It's one of the best things I think I've ever done.
Toyah became notorious in the 70s and 80s for her iconic punk style, most famously the red-dyed buzz cut created by Keith for her character Mad in Derek Jarman's dystopian punk film Jubilee.
My hair at that point was like a bob, but the bob was green and yellow. And this is what I used to do to my hair in Birmingham. So Derek gave me a part in Jubilee and sent me along to meet Keith Wainwright to get me fixed, as it were.
I wanted the colour to enhance and not masquerade as natural.
The first thing Keith Wainwright did was shave my head, which was a bit of a shock.
We would be talking about what they wanted to portray, and I was allowed to do, within the constraints of the period time or whatever, I could do in a way what I wanted.
One of my favouriteest times of working with Keith was on the video for Echo Beach. We had 2 days to do this shooting, and Keith came and created a very beautiful kind of beehive, pre-Patsy and AbFab. It was absolutely stunning.
I know it's out of fashion, and it's right along cold.
This is the beginning where women started to use their body as a weapon of control. And I either had to go with that or just back away. And with Echo Beach, we went with it. And Keith created this really beautiful image, which did the job. I mean, this was a huge hit right across Europe.
My job is very boring, I'm an office clerk. The only thing that helps me pass the time away is knowing I'll be back at Echo Beach someday.
Looking back on your incredibly successful career, what have you learned, and do you have any advice for young people?
So a bit of a mantra that I've been saying a lot lately is do something that you really like, and you'll never have to work again. So if you do something creative and you can get by and live, then that to me is what you need to be doing.
Lots of creative icons like yourself, especially from the 70s and 80s, it seems, are still creating constantly. What inspires you?
I'm very inspired at the moment that there is a group of women, a movement, who are about 15 years older than me, I'm 58, who are now becoming fashion rebels. And I think this is such a beautiful revolution. The next step is how do we live in the moment, knowing that our hair organically and physically changes so dramatically from the age of 50 right through to the end of life. We'll find a way of dealing with it. It's still hair, it's still utterly unique to our individual DNA. Therefore, let's wear it as part of our pride.